Boom! What up, world? What up? What up? What up? What up? It is Sunday at 8 p.m. Do you know where your POGs are? Of course you do. We're right here. It's your two favorite POGs, KJ Bradley and Chaplain Lance O'Neill. We are back for another week and another adventure. Holy smokes, what a difference a week makes. Yeah, I don't know how else to say it, but to just get into it, man. 34 and 0. Our guy took a supposed hit, and I use that term loosely. Our guy, President Trump, went undefeated in his state case for election fund misappropriation.
He went fully defeated.
Yeah, fully defeated, as he was found guilty on all 34 counts. Holy smokes! Chappie, you ready to get into this thing, man?
I am. I before we hit the video, I want to make one point about what we're going to see with these. All right. Yeah, so if you'll notice, a lot of people have been saying, what were the charges? Like, we hear it's about hush money and all that, but it took me a while to find what the actual charges were. And I was able to finally find them in a CNN had a breakdown. Now, the funny thing about the breakdown is, though, that these aren't like one count of murder, one count of homicide, one count of aggravated assault, one count of this, one count of that, one count of this one. They were like, it's like 11 counts. Okay, here's the three different things. One of them is 11, one of them is 12, and one of them is 11. Okay, that's where the 34 or so. Invoice from Michael Cohen. These are all, every single one of the charges is falsifying business records in the first degree. And the alleged falsified documents, so documents were allegedly falsified. Either invoices from Michael Cohen, voucher entry ledger, or check and stub. Okay. Now, I don't know about you, KJ, but to me, those are all the same thing. Personally, yeah. Somebody gives me an invoice, I'm writing the check to them, and then I'm writing it down in my business ledger. But that's kind of beside the point. But I think that when we're going to hear what Trump has to say about the scam and about this and that, and I want to come back after we listen to the video, because there are some things that I think he's right about, everything I've read, but for being as allegedly, I think he's a speaker in terms of riling up the crowd. I think he's not very good in actually getting his point across and being articulate about what the point is. So play that, and we'll come back and I can kind of explain why.
Before we do that, we're gonna
sure.
Start with the Megyn Kelly and the Dan Abrams debate. I don't know if you got a chance to check that out, but that was absolutely phenomenal. And just giving you guys a heads up, this is going to be a POTUS heavy show. Bear with us. We got some other stuff to talk about, but man, you can't just get hit with 34 felonies and then expect people not to talk about it. So,
right.
Let's get into it. First video.
No, I believe this jury had no choice but to conclude as it did, because the judge led them right to the fountain of guilt and said, drink, horsey, drink. So they did. So I don't have much disdain for the jury or its decision, because they followed the instructions that this judge gave them. But I have a lot of disdain for this judge, and not to mention this prosecutor. And I think they were working in concert the entire time to do one thing, which is fulfill Alvin Bragg's campaign promise to get Trump. And I have to say, I really disagree with what Cuomo said a minute ago, which is Trump only has himself to blame for this particular problem. That's just not true. That he has a partisan hack of a DA to blame for this particular problem, a DA who doesn't want to prosecute any crime unless it's by a man named Trump. He had the number of legal hoops that he had to jump through in order to bring this case in the first place were too numerous to outlay on this brief program. And he had a judge who allowed it at every turn, to the point where, I mean, the past couple of days, Dan, I've been talking to Garagos, Dershowitz, Mike Davis, Dave Ehrenberg. These are guys on all sides of the political aisle, not just lefties or righties, who still are confused about exactly what it was Trump was charged with. So the judge was complicit, and it was not a valid claim, not from the start.
But
and it certainly
again,
wasn't Trump's fault.
you're separating out almost the moral from the legal. I mean, Cuomo was making a moral point, I think, to some degree, which is that there's wrongdoing here, right? There was definitely wrongdoing. Whether it should have been a crime is a separate. What's the wrongdoing? What's the wrongdoing? All right, number one, it's paying $130,000 to a porn star to keep her quiet. That's to try to protect your campaign. Can we at least agree that's wrong?
That's not illegal. It's not
I didn't say it was. No. I just said moral versus legal.
Wrong. Are we talking moral?
I made it clear. I'm making it clear. For a minute, I'm talking about morality versus legality, right? There's no doubt that he engaged in.
All right, I'll tell. Here's my response to that, and I said this on my show the other day. I don't know what kind of weird marriage these two have. Same as I didn't know what kind of weird marriage Bill and Hillary Clinton had. So I don't know what their covenant is in terms of what he's allowed to do on the outside of his marriage.
But again, I don't mind the sex, but when you're paying $100, but I'm not talking about the sex. I'm talking about the $130,000 to keep her quiet to protect his campaign.
Immoral. There's nothing wrong with that at all. Nothing.
Really? Okay. Look, again,
if somebody runs for office, they just lose the right to have any privacy. They just have to let us see all of their dirty laundry from the moment they declare forward, or somehow they've done something morally wrong or legally wrong.
When you're doing it to protect the campaign and you are spending money on it, then now I'm going to switch back to the legal. You are now crossing the line into legal problems. Right?
You aren't. That's absolutely not right. Incorrect at every level.
Again, the idea that let me back up. And you don't think he falsified business records either?
I don't know what he did. I don't think he wrote down.
What does that mean? We just had a whole trial. We heard every detail of this. How can you not know?
Let me answer.
Please.
Let me answer. I don't think he wrote down hush money payment to Stormy Daniels. Nobody who pays hush money would write down such a thing. I think he wrote down, or someone at the Trump organization wrote down, legal expenses from the drop-down Adobe menu. And that made as much sense as anything else because hush money wasn't an option. He was paying his lawyer who had made the payment to Stormy Daniels, and he was, I believe, reimbursing her, though he denied that, reimbursing him, though he denied that on the stand. I don't think there's anything wrong with doing that. I think you pay your lawyer money because he outlaid money for you. You could easily classify that as a legal expense.
No matter what it's for, right? Even if it's illegal conduct, you can just put it's a legal expense, right?
This wasn't illegal. There's nothing illegal about paying hush money for an NDA. It's done
There's not.
all the time.
But when you're doing it to protect your campaign, it is. That's the difference.
No. What law are you citing, Dan?
Campaign finance laws. You're not allowed to give the...
You don't know what you're talking
about.
What
are you talking...
You're wrong.
Explain to me.
Let me explain to you.
Tell me what I'm getting wrong. Tell me what I'm getting wrong. When you're spending $130,000...
I'll explain.
Go ahead.
I get it, because you're saying that there are limits to the campaign contributions somebody could make, and this has exceeded them, and then they hit it. I understand. That's his theory. However, this has been wrong from the start.
Yeah.
It does not amount to a campaign contribution if it is the kind of payment that could ever be made outside of the campaign context.
That's not the standard. The standard is substantiality. It's not. It's substantiality.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
You're wrong.
Okay.
No, it's not.
I guess we're going to have to agree.
There's been Supreme Court precedent on this. Talk to Brad Smith, who was the FEC commissioner.
Court that the standard is substantiality. All right. Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find News Nation on your cable provider.
All right.
So, you're wrong, KJ.
So I know that video ran a little bit long, but I really enjoyed the back and forth between Megyn and Dan there. For those of you guys unfamiliar, Megyn Kelly is a former Fox analyst who has since branched off into her own independent world, and she's maintained a lot of her conservative vigor for the better or worse. And Dan Abrams has he's kind of held the battalion or the baton for the liberal agenda for quite a while now. So it was fun to be able to see those two people who might I also add are friends off screen, even though it didn't look like it in that clip. They are really, really good friends off screen. So it was fun to actually see them go at it online. So what are your initial thoughts? I have my thoughts about it, but what are your thoughts about it, Chappie? What did you see?
My thoughts are, I think Megan's right in terms of what I've read from legal from lawyers who have written and said this is unprecedented. Not just and this is where the media comes in. They say the media, oh, this is unprecedented, because we've never had a former president be charged with a criminal, right? So that's what makes it unprecedented. Well, what Megan brought up was it's unprecedented because the things they were charging him with normally at worst are a misdemeanor. So the DA went back, Alvin, what's his name? Alvin something?
Alvin Bright.
Right. So he went back and he upgraded these charges from a misdemeanor to a felony, because if it's a misdemeanor, the statute of limitations is gone. So from what I've seen and what I've read, that's never done. Like, this is the first time it's ever been done that way. I think Megyn Kelly's also right in terms of, if you're paying out money to keep somebody, or somebody, saying, hey, it's an NDA payout. Okay. And I think there is an equivalency. Some people say there's not, but between what Clinton did and his $800,000, that was a settlement, right? A legal settlement to Jones. Well, it's still a payout based on actions. I think the other part that to me is really interesting is that when you have the Supreme Court being asked, Speaker Johnson, right?
Yes.
Speaker Johnson. When Speaker Johnson came out, I saw an article from him a couple days ago that said, he said, look, I know lots of the Supreme Court justices. I know they are very concerned about about what's going on. And I hope that they will, take this up. And the response was, oh, see, Johnson, I want to know what Johnson's been talking to these guys about. Oh, they're behind closed doors colluding about this. It's like, dude, there's such a huge jump between, I know the justices, and I'm sure they're concerned about it too. Yeah, I sat down with several of the justices, and we had dinner, and we talked about what was going on with Trump. And so it's very curious to me, and what I mean by curious is not curious at all, is that the coverage of this is it the media that is leading the Democrats, or is it the Democrats that are leading the media? I think the media has, in a lot of ways, pushed this narrative about Trump, and the Democrats have been like, yeah, cool, let's go with that. And so I think there are just as many people in journalism and on the left in entertainment and Hollywood that are, what is De Niro doing going out on the streets of New York? So why, dude? That's just, you personally don't like the guy. Okay, great. But if Trump went out and said how much he hates De Niro in a news conference outside of where De Niro's being doing a movie out in New York, people be like, oh, what a petty scumbag. And if you go look at some of De Niro's stuff, De Niro's got some serious skeletons in the closet too. But anyway,
that's just
neither here nor there. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but more to the point, what if I told you they both were right? What if I told you they both?
How so?
Right? So they're arguing from two sides of the coin, right? So there has been legal precedent set for campaign finance laws, right? And yes, it has been extremely loosely enforced. That doesn't mean that the law isn't there, though, right? Just like jaywalking is a crime, however, when the last time you seen somebody get locked up for jaywalking, unless somebody's just really being a jerk about it. So, sure. In that regard, yes, there is legal precedent set. He did violate the law. I mean, if we go down and we look at it black and white, and we remove the names and we remove the circumstances behind it, did he reappropriate funds to pay for something he should have? And the answer is yes. Now, did it equate
maybe? Maybe. I still say maybe.
He has a check. He wrote the check. The check's there. We got, first thing we got to do is we got to be honest, right? We got to be honest with the situation. Whether you believe
it, hold on.
Right or wrong, he did it.
Let me say why I say maybe. Okay. Why was Nixon impeached?
Nixon has nothing to do with this. We are talking about
No, there's a point here. Hold on, there's a point here. Why was Nixon impeached?
You tell me. Go ahead. I'll let you finish.
Okay. See, the normal person would say, the average person is going to say because of Watergate. And you say, okay, well, did Nixon know about Watergate? Right? Pretty common. Okay. The problem is Nixon didn't know about Watergate when it was happening. So Nixon, like we've talked about, lost in the 1960 election to Kennedy because the Kennedy campaign ran about every dirty trick. The Kennedy campaign invented dirty tricks. So in 68, Nixon said, I'm not going to lose to dirty tricks. And then he won. And then in 72, he said, I'm not going to lose to dirty tricks. So what he did was he said, all right, go. He had two guys. He had two, like really his main two guys, right? One of them was, I believe, the Secretary of State. And then one of them was just a political guy or not Secretary of State. Who runs the White House? The guy that Chief of Staff. One was the Chief of Staff. Another one was just a really, really close political ally. And he said to political ally, hey, just make sure that we do everything we need to do, everything we can to win re-election, right? And he basically was establishing plausible deniability. So he goes out, G. Gordon Liddy and those guys, they go break into Watergate, yada, yada, yada. Everything happens. He didn't know about it at that point. Now, then when they get caught, they come to Nixon. His lawyer comes to him and says, Mr. President, here's the problem. These guys were acting on your behalf. And when we talk about who authorized it, it's your buddy, this guy, right? Who's political friend. I'm blanking on the name, but it was one of his long-term. And he said, what do you want to do? We can come clean, but it means you got to fire this dude, or we downplay it and kind of brush it aside and we do what we can so we can't let it out. And Nixon, being loyal, said, let's do that, right? Yep. And that's what got him in trouble. So with Trump, if you say he goes out, he sleeps with Stormy Daniels, which morality-wise, I mean, for me, I don't think it's okay. But if that's what I'm kind of with Megan on that. You do in your marriage what you want to do. But as far as if he's telling Cohen, hey, do what you need to do to keep these stories out of the press. Just like the National Enquirer, the publisher for the National Enquirer calls him up and says, hey, I've got this story. It's going to be bad, but I can buy the rights to the story. What the dude or what the woman wants is $100,000, and I'll own the story, and I'll have a non-disclosure agreement so she can't publish it anywhere else. Do you want me to kill it? And Trump says, talk to Michael, talk to Cohen, talk to Michael, talk to Michael. Michael says, 100,000 for that? Yeah, worth it. Here you go. Right? And then Trump said, and this is where Megyn Kelly's saying, hey, if Michael Cohen is now saying, hey man, I spent $100 to take $100,000 to take care of you, and this is protecting you, so here's the bill for 100,000, then that's where I think the problem is. If Trump was saying, give this $100,000 to Stormy Daniels so she does not break up, so she does not hurt the campaign, and here's the key part to me, and take it out of the funds from the election, then okay, then I'm with you. I still don't, look, I'll tell you right now, I have yet to hear a real clear argument about where these funds came from. Because if you're Trump,
man, you were blowing so much smoke, I'm gonna have to cut my dadgum fan on in here. Are you serious? Are you serious? Listen to yourself. Listen to yourself.
I'm not a Trump fan, dude.
Yeah, I got you. And neither am I, but we're not being honest at all. What you're telling me is you would be okay, first of all, having somebody come to you and then somebody paying to squash a story is not only highly unethical, it's also illegal. You can't do that. You can't do that. You guys have crushed Democrats for a lot less. And I'm not saying you guys, politicians have been crushed for a lot less. Two, to say that, oh, we don't know what he paid for would disregard all of the evidence submitted. I'm okay with the hearsay. I'm okay with the this, that, and the other. But to sit back and be like, well, I don't know if he did it or not. They got the Joker on voicemail with the head of the Inquirer, with Michael Cohen on voicemail, having the exact conversation about, hey, this woman needs money. What should we do? He's like, yo, take care of it. I need it taken care of immediately. So to sit back
and what did you? But what did you just say? Take care of it, right? So what I'm saying is, I don't know. I'm not claiming he didn't. I'm personally claiming ignorance. I don't know where that money came from. If it came from the campaign, here's where I have a problem with it. If it comes from the campaign, and the campaign laws say there are certain things you can pay with this money, and these are the only things you can pay for, and paying off the NDA is not within those limits, then I'm with you.
That's it.
Cool.
But that's the whole argument. That's the whole argument. If you strip away all the other perceptive stuff, right? All right, hey, he's a scumbag. He slept outside his marriage, blah, blah, blah. Yes, the federal government's out to get him. The guy got a rap sheet 30 miles long at this point. Got it. At the end of the day, here is where he was wrong. The campaign finance laws have strict adherence to what you can and cannot spend money on. We can agree to that. You cannot take that money. Okay. You cannot take money that was raised for your campaign to pay off negative stories. You cannot.
Was that illegal? Okay, let me ask you something. So the funds from the campaign went to Michael Cohen. Is that correct?
They went to Michael Cohen.
Okay. So if the funds from the campaign go to Michael Cohen to reimburse him for legal fees, is that still legal?
That is not legal fees, though. And you have the testimony, but you have the testimony of that's like you giving me $100 saying, "Hey, Brad, you're a great guy. Here's $100," and I take that $100 and go buy some cocaine with it, right?
So here's where I think the doubt creeps in, is because you have Michael Cohen, who is a convicted felon himself,
But why is he a convicted felon?
Because he lied about all the campaign stuff and everything else too. He's lying too. So
he refused to serve president. That's the whole point, though. Like we can go around and like we're fluffing this up. And I'll give you a prime example. Let's go back to 2000. Let's go back to 2008, 2012. You got a young Barry H. Obama, right? Running for re-election.
Quickly aging.
Yeah.
A quickly aging Obama.
In 2012, right? In the heart of his campaign, you find out that what's the reverend? The reverend of his church. The
right.
They got Reverend Wright, right? Reverend Wright couldn't pay the bills on his church, and they were gonna close the church down. Barry Hussein takes $150,000 out of his campaign money and buys that church for the reverend, right? Do you think Barry Hussein Obama survives that election? Yes or no?
Well, I think we both say it's probably no because of
absolutely. But that's the burden. That's the burden that we're faced with here, right?
So hold on. There's two parts to that. If Barack Obama takes that money and he says, "This was out of my book deal, and I wanted to buy Reverend Wright the church," nobody has a problem with that, right?
Nobody has a problem if you verify, though. If you can come back and verify that's where the proof lies.
Okay. So here's, let's say what you're going down, right? That Barack Obama, he's not even a good example. Biden, let's go with President Biden right now.
Everyone knows Biden got his own. Biden should have been in jail a long time ago. But
because I don't think Trump is squeaky clean. Are you kidding? This is the guy who in 2016 said, "Of course I use every loophole. Of course I take advantage of the tax code. Of course I do everything I can get away with. Here's the line. This is where I go to. Of course." So, that's fine. Okay. So I think if you have him doing that, and he's doing it in 2016, and maybe this is probably the thing that bothers me more than anything. And this is something that's bothered me for years, and it doesn't matter if it's a politician or a normal person. If you go and you're walking down the street and you go knock on somebody's door, you're going to ask them for a glass of water, right? You're thirsty. You've been running. You're just dying. You really need some water. And so you go on and you knock on the door, and the door swings open, and you kind of yell, "Hey, excuse me, is there anybody in here? Excuse me." And you kind of step in and like, "Hey, I'm just hey, I was wondering if I could use your hose, get some water." And you don't hear anything, and you're like, "Well, I hope everything's okay." And then you shut the door and you go use the water. Police come and pick you up 5 minutes later. Now, they're going to charge you with trespassing, breaking and entering, theft of property. They're going to charge you with just ridiculous things, right? Okay. Absolutely. The overcharging. So for me, it's probably a bigger deal, the overcharging of all this. Because if this happened in 2016, and like you said, there's laws in place, but if these laws in place had exceeded and are now passed what are by law, these statute of limitations, and the DA is going back and, pun intended, trumping up the charges. That's where I have a problem too. So look, if it had come out and a story had come out that said, "Hey, Trump paid off Stormy Daniels," I think everybody kind of goes, "Yeah, sounds about right." I think everybody kind of knew. I don't think that's a surprise. When in 2018, when this whole thing, whatever, blew up, everybody kind of went, "Yeah, okay, he's kind of a dirtbag as far as that goes." But my problem is and again, I did not. What I followed of the trial, I'm kind of with Megyn Kelly, and I'm with Dershowitz, and I'm with I'm with liberal lawyers, and I'm not a lawyer. I don't pretend to be. But when I read enough lawyers, I'll go, what is he being charged with, and why? This is ridiculous. When you have people on the left saying this is crazy, that know the law, then I think you have to kind of also go, huh. The funny thing about all this, here's the funny part, KJ. Let me ask you, is this going to matter at all?
Absolutely not. And we can get to that. We are 30 minutes into this show. Holy scamoles. Let's get to that. Is it going to matter at all? It's a couple of things I want to play real quick. They're going to be super fast, and then we'll get back to it. First thing we're going to play is his reception at UFC. All copyrights go to UFC, by the way, so please don't sue me.
Please don't.
Don't sue us.
Costa also with us tonight. 45. Being ushered in by UFC CEO Dana White. Donald Trump is in the building, and the former president getting a standing ovation from the assembled masses here at UFC 302.
So we're going to be appealing this scam. We're going to be appealing it on many different things. He wouldn't allow us to have witnesses. He wouldn't allow us to talk. He wouldn't allow us to do anything. The judge was a tyrant.
And that is former President Trump speaking out again to challenge this week's historic guilty verdict in the hush money trial against him in New York City. Mr. Trump found guilty on all 34 counts of falsifying business records. But those legal losses, or that initial verdict, turning into campaign gains in the form of millions and millions of dollars. News Nation's Alina Shirazi is in Washington, D.C. with more. Alina, there are a lot of people who have found grounds for an appeal on Mr. Trump's behalf. I mean, just in terms of looking at some of the flaws in this case, there are people online saying lock him up. Others are saying they donated for the first time following this verdict. And you have people saying, it's received over $50 million in donations, the campaign has.
And to the breaking political news now, we do have a new ABC News Ipsos poll, and it's our first look at how voters are reacting to the felony conviction of former President Trump. The polling started the day after the New York jury found Trump guilty on 34 counts of falsifying business records to hide hush money paid to porn actress Stormy Daniels. ABC News political director Rick Klein joins us live now from Washington with this. Rick, good morning to you. Let's take a look at the numbers here, because our poll suggests that 50% of Americans think the verdict against Trump Trump was correct. 49% think he should end his campaign. So, Rick, what does that tell us?
Yeah, good morning, Gio. That is a really striking number. This is such a closely divided country, and the fallout from this verdict is no different. And to see it split along party lines is one thing, but to see these stark numbers and see that half the country thinks it was the verdict was right and almost half thinks he should drop out tells you something about the political damage or the potential damage that Trump faces. Most Republicans are backing Trump, but it was striking to me in this poll to see about 1 in 6, 16% of Republicans say that this verdict was correct and say he should drop out. Those are big, big numbers, but this has divided the country like so many other issues before it.
Big numbers, Rick, but these numbers change when you look at Americans who specifically view Trump and Biden unfavorably, and it's very interesting.
Yeah, this is a big headline out of the poll, Gio, because when you drill down on these numbers, you see 65% of the people that dislike both candidates, we're calling them so-called double haters in this race, think the verdict was correct, and 67% think that Trump should end the campaign. Now, why is that a big deal? Well, we have an election that has two candidates who are so historically disliked.
Okay, yeah, that was enough. All right, so working our way backwards to forward, that poll is not indicative. I showed that video last for a reason, because that poll is not indicative to what the people on the ground are saying. Everywhere POTUS Trump shows up at, he's getting standing ovations, packed houses. And then the guy raised 50, I think it was 58 million total. That ended up being the total within the 48 hours after the campaign.
I think that was 24 hours.
24? Listen,
yeah,
man.
because I saw something where they were comparing that to when the Roe v. Wade was overturned, and they looked at all campaigns after that. Everybody that donated to any Democrat, not Republican, not any Democrat, and it was like 23 million. Trump, only to Trump, not to the GOP, not to anybody else. Only Trump was like 58 million in the same one-day period.
Listen, man, the Democrats I get what they're trying to do, and whoever is on their political strategy board is sending them guys down a long, slow grave to hell, because they are firing up the base for the red team, and they are getting Trump's base live. It's like sticking to a hornet's nest, man. Those jokers are ready to roll, and if the Biden administration does not do some serious course corrections, they are going to be in trouble come November. And yeah, man, it's wow, bro. It is insane. They ended up giving him a 2 or 3 minute standing ovation at the fight at UFC 302. And then the 24-hour, I mean, you sit back and you look at this dude, okay, I get it, right? Trump is probably the most persecuted president in recent American history, right? I think his resume, 2 impeachments, 34 felonies. I think it was, 16 indictments. Like, dude has dude has a rap sheet longer than any career criminal I know. But the guy is Teflon. I mean, he will put what's the dude from the 80s, the mob boss? The Teflon Don. What was his name? I can't think his name right.
Are you talking about John Gotti?
John Gotti. He will put John Gotti to shame with the way this dude would charges bounce off of this guy, man. And I'm telling you, I am firmly convinced, if nothing more, the events of last week have convinced me that this guy, for whatever reason, can do absolutely no wrong. He has reached martyr status within the eyes of the GOP. And
yeah,
you get a political candidate like that, you get that Obama effect in 08, right? Where no matter who you run up against and no matter what you say, you're not going to win that ticket. You might as well just wrap it up and get ready for the next 4 years.
I saw one. Oh, it was Michael Mallon saying that the Democrats, if somebody goes to Biden with how bad his numbers are, who he thought that they were going to pull in would be Hillary, because she beat Trump in the popular vote in 2016. And I like Michael Mallon, but on this one, I think he's insane, because you bring Hillary in, all her health issues, all her negatives, everything that's come out in the past 8 years about the Clinton Foundation and everything else. I don't see it. I think Trump probably beats her by even more. But one thing about the Ipsos, okay, I'm always dubious about polls, right?
Absolutely.
Because
that poll was wrong from the minute they said the new poll came out.
Yeah. So they said close. These are the numbers though. The people that have followed how they followed it: 20% very closely, 35% somewhat closely, 28% not closely, and 16% not closely at all. Okay.
Wow.
So that's one of those things you kind of go, well, okay, so how accurate can this be? Because your margin of error is showing 3%, but then you have 44% that say not so closely or not closely at all. And then you're going to ask them, do they think they're guilty? Okay. So then, and it's the wording of questions is always interesting.
Yep.
Especially with polls. Because the third question they asked was this: as you may know, not leading at all, as you may know, Donald Trump was found guilty on all 34 counts in his trial related to falsifying business records regarding a payment made to Stormy Daniels before the 2016 election. Do you think this verdict was correct or not? So if you don't know to begin with, well, as you may know.
Yeah.
Okay. So you feel like an idiot if you're going, I don't know.
Yeah.
And then the next one, do you think the presidential campaign was pretty straight up? In this case, do you think Donald Trump did so? Okay, here are the choices. In this case, do you think Donald Trump intentionally did something illegal, acted wrongly but not intentionally, didn't do anything wrong, or don't know? So from April 6, 7, that was asked. And then the verdict comes out and it was asked again. That number went from 53% in April to 51% after the trial. That's kind of curious, don't you think?
Okay.
Acted wrongly, but not intentionally, went from 11% up to 12. Did nothing wrong, went from 20% up to 19. Don't know, from 16% to 17%. So what I think you have there, reading the polls, and that's why I've always been dubious of polls, is how you ask a question. You can mess with a poll simply by saying, who do you support for president? Press 1 for Biden, press 2 for Trump. You can actually change the numbers simply by flipping Trump 1, Biden 2.
Yeah.
It might not be a significant change, but it is a change.
Yeah, it's all psychological.
So, yeah. So, psyop, huh? So, weird. So, yeah. So I think that when you're talking about all this stuff, like, again, I look at it and I think you're dead on. UFC. Why, ask yourself, why does Joe Biden not go to any major events? And we're not talking UFC. Look, UFC is male dominated. Probably most of the guys in the audience like, he screwed a porn star. Yeah, good for you. Yeah, go Trump. But I think that when you look at, you're trying to get the dog, but when you look at just the general things, you like, I saw a picture of a Biden rally last week, 10 days ago. It was a church that looked half full, a couple hundred people at most. Joe Biden's not even on the campaign trail. He's not the one going on The View. It's Jill Biden. She's the one that goes on with George Stephanopoulos and then goes on The View. I look at it and I think if you just, and Trump walking in right there. Now people could say, oh, well, Trump's old too. Trump walking in right there to UFC, I got to admit, I didn't look at him and go, wow, look how old he is. Look how out of shape he is. Like, he doesn't look like somebody that physically can do this job. I think there's things physically with President Biden that he does.
I think
but these are all, oh, for sure, they're protecting him. And the media is protecting him again. And I think all of those things work against President Biden because you don't have COVID to hide behind.
Yep.
You don't have a situation where they can say, well, he's a little bit older and, we're just trying to be safe. So if you want to do an interview, we're going to do it, from beam it in from the basement and all that stuff. You have Trump out there pulling 80,000 people in New Jersey, and what was it, 25,000 in the Bronx?
Yep.
I'm kind of surprised there wasn't a let's go Biden chant at the UFC after that, or let's go Brandon. Sorry.
Yeah. I'm you have to, and the Democrats, what was the was it FDR? Was it FDR that did the radio chats? He had the polio, so the
fireside.
Yeah.
Fireside chats, yeah.
They're trying to do the same thing with Biden, but it doesn't work. That strategy is not going to work because you got one candidate who's, despite the age difference, you got one candidate who's out with the people, who's mingling, who's showing his vitality, who's taking on these interviews straight on, whether they're prepped or not, he's giving the country FaceTime. And you got this other candidate that's very protected, that's only talking from behind the podium, that's prepared speeches with very little question and Q&A sessions behind it. And it's a strategy doomed to fail the Democrats, man. I'm telling you.
Well, so here's the second part of that, though. It's a catch-22 for the Biden campaign.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because the few times that Joe Biden has come out from behind the podium to answer somebody's question, what was it last week? Somebody yelled a question to him that I thought, I don't remember what the question was, but it seemed like a pretty legitimate question. And Biden comes up, I don't need you just keep asking this. And it's like, that was a pretty legitimate question. I don't know what he's getting all.
He came off real get off my lawn-ish, right?
Oh yeah, Clint Eastwood. He very Gran Turismo. And yeah. And it's one of those things that as the Democratic campaign goes, like how do you deal? You read articles that are coming out, and the fact that they are coming out and being published makes you know this is not just some smoke. That Democrats high up in the machine are worried about Biden, and that he's not going to. They should be, absolutely. So at what point, I remember reading one article that talked about how when Bernie Sanders was leading in 2019 in the primaries, that the powers that be, the Democratic Party, whoever runs Tammany Hall these days, called up Buttigieg and one of the other guys and said, "Hey guys, sorry, not this time. It's Biden. You need to support him and you'll be taken care of." And in the same time, both of them dropped out, threw it to Biden. Biden was able to go from there, and they were able to, shall we say, screw Bernie.
You can get Clyburn for that.
Yeah. So I think that when you have this unpopular of a president, I mean, his numbers are historically low.
Absolutely.
When you have somebody who, it's not just about how old he is, but he looks it. My mom is 84 years old. My mom just had surgery where a hole was drilled into her head, literally the size of a golf ball. And you can see in the pictures, you can see her skull. This is walking around. This isn't like after. This was before they were able to do the skin graft, right? And my mom, I think, is more coherent in a day-to-day situation than President Biden. And I think we lost KJ. He'll be back in a second. So I think when you have a president who comes off as that old, that he comes off as, there he is, comes back off as that old, comes off as somebody who legitimately is not physically up for the job.
And he looks
that is a huge, and he looks it versus President Trump, former President Trump, who looks fine.
I have a treat for you. Bill O'Reilly has suggested a way to help the Democrats get back on path and a way to win the election. Are you surprised? This is going to be interesting. Check this out.
the most important thing in this story is something that you overlooked, but I was surprised because you bang this drum on the Cuomo program all the time. This is creating even more discord in the United States. Not since the Civil War.
Yeah, I agree. I said it. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
it's exacerbating things.
Not since the Civil War has the citizenry hated each other, and I use that word literally, as much as it does now. It's going to get worse. So now we have bitterness, we have acrimony, we will have violence, that's coming. We have 50% of the country believes the justice system is corrupt. 50, maybe more. Remember, 70 million people voted for Donald Trump. 70 million. So what should happen now, and I wrote this on BillO'Reilly.com, and I steered you to it, but I don't think you went in, is that tomorrow, President Biden should pardon Donald Trump of any and all crimes and suggest publicly that Governor Hochul do the same thing. And then on Saturday, President Biden should pardon his son Hunter. That would throw the whole acrimonious system into absolute chaos. And there's precedent, as you know, because Gerald Ford did exactly the same thing when Richard Nixon could have been charged in Watergate, and those crimes were 1,000 times worse than what Trump was charged with.
Well,
so that's...
Now, I will admit, over the years, I've become more of a fan of Mr. O'Reilly, especially after he got off his platform. He seemed to kind of mellow out a little bit more and take a more moderate stance while keeping his conservative values intact. But that one shocked me. I did not see that coming from him at all. What do you think?
Let me ask you one question. I think I missed something here. He said that Biden should pardon Trump, and then Biden should also pardon his son?
That is exactly what he said.
I think that would make the average Trump supporter even more cynical. I think they would go, look, he's pardoning Trump only because then he can pardon his son, and that way nobody can say anything about it. I know that's when I first heard that, I was like, wait a minute, did I miss? Was that Biden? Biden was gonna pardon Trump, and then Trump, when he gets in office, he'll pardon Biden? That's kind of weird. Like Trump, I don't see Trump making that deal. And that's like hey, handshake deal. I'm gonna sign you to a $20 million NBA contract when you become a free agent.
Yeah.
Right, Joe Smith, Minnesota Timberwolves? Yeah. If you don't know that reference, go look that one up. Tampering, Minnesota Timberwolves and Joe Smith. Now I've seen that in some other places that Biden could potentially pardon him, but he can't. O'Reilly's right. He could say it. But I mean, unless there's some federal charges that he's talking about, that are separate, because so
what he look telling him to, if he does it, if he does it publicly and he puts the pressure on Governor Hochul to pardon him at the state, because at the end of the day, it's a state crime, and we'll get to that in a minute. I got to follow on with that because I figured this is where this would lead. So he was saying it would give him the bigger man look, you know what I'm saying, and then kind of bring peace. And I think it'll have the opposite effect. I think that the Trump fervor is so strong right now that anything Biden does to help Trump, even if helping, will be a sign of confession, right? Even I know the DOJ was wrong, so I'm gonna throw him a bone, and that just either way it'll end up biting him in the butt.
So there's two problems with that. Okay, so let's say Biden does come out. Now let's set aside that then he pardons Hunter, because I think any goodwill he got from pardoning Trump goes immediately out the window if he pardons Hunter, because that would be, to me, that would be the real reason why he did it. But let's say he came out and he said that, and he said, hey, I've reached out to Governor Hochul and said, I think that she should pardon President Trump in the name of the United States, very much like, she could be the female Gerald Ford, to set aside some of the divisiveness. And obviously it's up to her, but I am supporting that. I think she should. And if the idea is that he were to then say, the logical question, I think, of any decent reporter, so the logical question of maybe 3 current journalists in America would be, well, President Biden, why do you think he should be pardoned then? Because if he did something wrong, he committed a crime, we understand that you can say national unity, but isn't the law more important, like the rule of law? And if he said, well, what you just said, well, maybe the DOJ went a little over, the New York. Okay, well, now you've totally just shot yourself in the foot, because I don't think the average person knows the number 3 lawyer in the Department of Justice, the number 3 guy, stepped down, resigned from the Department of Justice, which is a federal post. That's a big deal post, to go be an assistant DA on this case against President Trump. So to me, that in and of itself is a huge red flag. It makes me go, wait a minute. The number 3 guy in the DOJ, and I didn't know this until a couple of weeks ago, the number 3 guy in the DOJ left that job just to go work on this prosecution? What?
Hold that
That's thought. Yeah.
So former President Trump expected to attend a UFC event tonight in Newark, New Jersey, days after his New York City conviction. Joining us with more on the Trump verdict aftermath and President Biden's reaction, Kansas Senator Roger Marshall, member of the Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee. So you just heard the president say that the former president had every opportunity to defend himself in court and that the justice system worked. What do you say to that, Senator?
Wow, what we saw was a rigged judge, a rigged DA. The whole timing of this trial was rigged as well. No, I don't think that this is what it's supposed to look like. I think everybody across the world is looking at this mockery and saying the president of the United States took the blindfold off of Lady Justice and then he threw her underneath a speeding bus. No, he did not have an opportunity to defend himself. Not when a judge, like he had in this particular trial, put their total weight on the scale.
Well, you are one of the signers of a Senate letter that suggests you don't want to cooperate with the Biden administration on anything that doesn't involve the safety and security of the American people as a result of this conviction. There it is. You're one of the 8 U.S. senators who have signed it. What's the purpose here?
Right. So we've seen Joe Biden make a mockery of our legal system, and we are going to fight fire with fire. We are going to grind the Senate to a halt as best we are going to fight against every one of his political nominations, every one of his judges that he's nominating, any type of his agenda we can. We're going to slow it down as best possible. There's something called unanimous consent, and that's how about 90% of the legislation gets through the Senate. We're going to do everything we can to throw the brakes on this. Look, what Joe Biden did was election interference by attacking his chief political rival, keeping him from.
Okay. So before we go, shout out to Ozzy, man. He's been on point with us all show. But he says he didn't know about the DOJ guy. That's wild. So before we went to break and saw that video, we talked about how wrong it was for the number 3 guy in the DOJ to resign from his federal position to go interfere with a state case. We watched the video, and you have a member of the sitting Congress saying that he is going to stop the work of Congress because of that case. How do you feel?
I think it's dumb. I think if we're at the point where you can't get stuff done because of this, now don't get me wrong, I understand why. I understand the thoughts there. Because I've made this argument, this association, and I haven't seen anybody else, which honestly surprises me because I might be a smart guy. I didn't realize I was this smart than nobody else.
That's why we have to solve all the problems.
If I was the GOP, okay, here's going to be our clip. When you get this stuff set up for TikTok, producer, get ready because here comes your clip. If the GOP has anyone that's any good in the media, they will be banging the Putin is to Navalny as Biden is to Trump. Because if you can go out and you can arrest the guy who's making waves against you, and Navalny wasn't nearly the threat that Trump is to Biden. This was a guy who wasn't going to win, but what did Putin go out? He went out and arrested him. He sent him to Siberia. The guy gets poisoned to death.
Accidentally.
And Putin said, and Putin said, I did not want him dead so soon. I mean, at all, So now you have the DOJ, and if anybody tries to tell me that there's no connection between these cases, then that's just laughable. Because now not only do you have this guy and these 8 senators saying we're going to grind to a halt what's going on, I've also seen, and I think it's another top DOJ guy that was with Trump in his White House that basically said, well, you know what needs to happen now? We need to have some of these red state attorneys, attorney generals, attorneys general. We need to have some of these red state attorneys generals go after President Biden. We need to go full investigation into his connection between Hunter Biden and the money in Ukraine and China and the top secret classified. Hey, they're going to do this to Trump with the top secret classified. We need to do the same thing. And we're not even going into the top secret stuff. That stuff is just, once you get down the rabbit hole.
I'm guilty about that, right? Or not guilty.
Oh my gosh.
He had the stuff in the garage, right?
Well, but not just that. I mean, when you have Mar-a-Lago being raided the way it was, it turns out, you remember those pictures with all the little file folders that say top secret on them? Yeah, it turns out that the raiders came in and had those. The guys that went in and raided, and they put them down. And then when they were caught red-handed, they basically said, oh, well, we had them there because we thought there was going to be classified material, and we were going to put them on those documents so nobody could protect, so nobody could get into them. So it's one of those things that just like the more that the White House does to try and eliminate Trump, I think all they're doing is digging their own grave. And not only they're digging their own grave, we're getting into Harry Reid territory. Harry Reid famously changed the rules in the Senate, and he changed a thing called the nuclear option, where instead of needing 60 votes to pass certain laws, it became a majority only. So it was a 50-50. The vice president could come in and vote, and then there you go, or a 51, right? So even back then, McConnell and all the Republicans were going, hey, this is not, don't do it. Don't do it, because you're not always going to be in power. And Harry Reid, being Harry Reid, said, nope, we are getting this done. We are doing this. Then what happens? A few years later, Trump's in there. He's got a Republican Senate. And they went, guess what? We're going to use the nuclear option. We won't change the rules. But if you're going to change the rules and you're going to make those the new rules, cool. I'm all over it. And I think that is what's happening here. So you can say, Bill O'Reilly can say that's one of my Raptors. You can have Bill O'Reilly come on and say well, this is the way to heal the country. But I don't think so. I think the way to heal the country, honestly, is for Brewster's Millions. Vote none of the above. We need to vote people that want to be in Washington, that are truly there to serve. We need to pass, because when we say 2 POGs Save the World, we started this with talking about how do we fix things. And term limits, constitutional amendments to a term limit is what I would go for personally. If we are going to continue to have these people that are more worried about the hackery of being, I'm a Democrat, I'm a Republican, I'm going to grind everything to a halt. Look, the reason that Bill Clinton is still seen today as such a great president has nothing to do with Bill Clinton. People don't realize 92, Bill Clinton came in with a Democratic held House and a democratically held Senate. They got wiped out in 94 by Newt Gingrich, right? Yep. And the Contract for America. Yep. From 94 through the rest of Bill Clinton's, there was at least a Democrat in the White House, and one of 2, if not both, were held by Republicans. So suddenly what happened was, if the Republicans brought a bill and said, hey, this is a good bill in the House, and the Senate went, yeah, that's a pretty good bill, we can do that. They worked together, they got it done, it went to Clinton, he passed it, it was a good bill, right? So when you have those split houses, that's what's supposed to happen. The Republicans are supposed to have the House right now, or, in the House and the Senate. And what's supposed to happen is good bills are supposed to go one way or the other, get passed in one house or the other, and then go to the president. Well, at this point, if you're not going to work with anybody and you can't see what is a good bill, and you're going to say, we're just not going to pass it. And don't get me wrong, I have problems with the Republicans. I have a problem with Democrats. The fact we haven't had a budget in how many years? That's your job, dude. That's like the one job in the Constitution the Senate has, is to do a budget. And they haven't had a budget in, I don't think, since like the aughts. I don't think they've passed a budget. I don't think they have. So they're not doing their jobs. I would like to see things like that. A constitutional amendment that says, if there is not a budget passed and a balanced budget passed, every sitting at the end of whatever year that is, every sitting representative and every sitting senator is no longer eligible for re-election. You think we'd have a problem with the budgets after that?
Guarantee you it'll be squared away.
Of course. But it goes back to, well, this pork and the spending and all that. The United States is taking in more money than they've ever. It's not a tax issue. It's a spending issue, right? And an inflation issue too. But to kind of pull it back in, if we're at a situation where politicians, and again, I understand where this guy is coming from. I get it. But to say it is stupid. It goes back to the same stupidity as President Biden saying, well, if I have an open seat in the Supreme Court, I am absolutely only going to look at black female, African-American female justices. That's it. Dude, you can think it. You can do it. You don't say it. So if these 8, why write a letter? Why not just do it? And then when the interviews come out and they say, hey, why are you doing this? Oh, I think this goes right to the heart of Joe Biden's policy about this, and this, and how he done this, and this. And so I just don't feel comfortable with allowing this judge, when President Biden has been so unjust towards, former President Trump, and he's willing to take the Department of Justice and weaponize it. So, yeah, I think that goes right in line with how he's acted. So I feel like this should be my job, is to stop this legislation. And then the next guy, and the next guy. You don't come out and announce it. It's the same thing that happened with Afghanistan. There was a reason you don't come out and say, we are going to leave Afghanistan by the end of August 2021, or whatever the date was, right? Because then the Taliban sits back and go, okay, We just got to wait for a couple more months. Cool. We have a date now. Awesome. And that's all we have to do. So I think that, and KJ gets his final thoughts. He'll be back here in a second. But I think that when you have, there you are, when you have people who are unwilling to do their jobs, when you have people who are not doing what they're supposed to be doing in their jobs, and this, I'm going to add this in a little bit. If and when President Trump goes in, you are going to see, let's see, you get sworn on Tuesday, right? Is that the day it is? It's a Tuesday?
First Tuesday after the New Year.
First Tuesday after the New Year's. You're going to see Bloody Wednesday, where about half of the federal government gets fired. You're going to have, oh, absolutely. You're going to see so many department heads fired. You're going to see that every lawyer in the DOJ is going to get fired. The head of the FBI is going to get fired. He is going to go in, and if he wins, and I don't blame him, he's going to go in and identify everybody, and he's going to call them deep staters, and in a lot of cases he's going to probably be accurate, not all, but he's going to go in and he's going to go, okay, you're saying the end of democracy. I'm going to show you what that means. And what I mean by that is he's going to say, I'm going to take it as far as I possibly can. And that's where I think the axe is going to absolutely fall. And I think short term, he's going to get a lot of applause for it. And I hope the unintended consequence of that is that, and I this is where I don't trust. I hope the unintended consequence of that is that if he does go in and he just decimates the bureaucracy in DC, that he actually brings people in that are qualified and do want to do the job because they care. And that's where I'm saying, I know, I'm being the optimist.
Yeah.
I'm being the optimist here. And that's where I would like to see that happen. I don't believe it's going to happen, but I do think the axe will fall on Bloody Wednesday. And I'm coining that term right now. Bloody Wednesday.
We know how that movie plays out, though. We know how that movie.
Do we?
Yeah. If you fire 50% of the federal workforce and replace them with all people who are aligned with you and your ideologies, we've seen that playbook quite a few times. That never ends well.
But you know what? So
just never ends well.
So I think that's why the second part comes into play about getting people that actually want to do the job. I think that most people who were to get a call, let's say you're KJ and you have some contacts and he's like, hey, you know what? I want to have somebody from South Carolina and I know this KJ Jackson's been down there working with the state house, and he calls you up, and let's say you're even a moderate, and he calls you up and say, hey, I've heard you're good at this. And you go, yeah, I'll come work for you. I think Trump is actually the type of guy who wants to win. I don't think he would hamstring himself with people that are not able to do the job. Now, that said, he will more than happily fire people who he is ready to fire. Mad Dog Mattis.
My biggest concern with that is I believe you, and I do believe Trump is that guy. But what I do also believe, and I also seen that he surrounds himself with a lot of guys like Steve Bannon, who don't have
sycophants for sure,
who don't have the country's best interest at hand. And what happens is when you get more Steve Bannons than you do Mad Dog Mattis's, things don't end well.
So, okay. And I know we're on final thoughts. So, but I have to ask though, because I look at some of this stuff and I appreciate Mattis. I would have voted. I wanted a draft Mattis campaign going in 16. And you're talking about, I believe it's Harding was president during the teapot scandal, where his Secretary of State was basically selling making a lot of money and giving oil guys money to go in and behind Harding's back. And Harding should have known, but he didn't. Well, at the same time, you can say, well, Trump goes off and he's paranoid and this and that. But then you read the book by Mark Esper, who was his Secretary of Defense, and who was the general, the 4-star Malley.
Was it
Malley?
Was it Malley? You talking about
Malley?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. When you read in Esper's book how they talk to each other about, we have to make sure we don't let Trump do these things. I'm about the Constitution. I'm here to protect the Constitution and not do what President Bush or President Trump wants to do. I'm a constitutionalist. Last time I checked, if the President of the United States wants the National Guard called up, you call up the National Guard, whether you agree with it or not. And if you were so opposed to it, you resign. You don't pussyfoot around it. You don't slow play it. You don't work with Malley. And Malley, as a 4-star general, was actively working against Trump, calling China generals in China to say, dude, don't stress. I got you. If he tries to do anything, we'll stop him. That's treasonous to me.
To be fair, President Trump was not the president that should be trusted with everything. Like, you don't tell guys like Trump everything. You just kind of give him enough to make him feel like he's in charge.
Not according to the Constitution. Who knew?
When the last time we followed
what did Truman think about the Manhattan Project as the vice president?
No, I got it. But I want you.
Do you want to know what? Well, wait a minute. Do you know what Truman thought about it?
Before we get into constitutionalism, look at me.
Hold on. Do you know what you just said, though? Do you know what Truman thought as the VP? Do you know what Truman thought about the Manhattan Project?
Yeah, he thought it would bring about the end of the world. He hated it.
He didn't know anything about it because he was the VP and they didn't tell him. The vice president of the United States did not know about the Manhattan Project. He was not read in until he became the president when FDR died.
Yeah, but he was opposed. That's why they didn't tell him, because he was opposed to it.
He didn't know about it. He didn't know. He's the one who decided to drop the bomb.
I got you.
Truman.
But when we talk about the Constitution again, I want you to focus on me, right? So that Constitution reads completely different depending on who's reading it. It just does. It does.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, it has to. Otherwise, you wouldn't. It has to. Otherwise, you wouldn't have Supreme Court justices going 5-4.
Well, I mean, hell, even with the Supreme Court, it's like, so yeah. Do we follow the Constitution? It depends. Depends on how. Depends on how the country's feeling that generation.
Okay. So what I'm saying, is if Trump gets back in, and he has read Esper's book, and he has seen all the things that happened while he was president, and he's read all these things, and he knows the people. He knows the people that scurried out and said, yeah, of course we're deep state, which has happened. There are people who've come out and said, of course the deep state exists, and said, whoops. I thought, you said the quiet part out loud.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's where I think he's going to go in, and he's just going to, and hey, maybe it works out, maybe it doesn't. At this point, KJ, could it get worse? I mean, if you say at this point worse is a civil war, at least we'll be done with it.
Here's what I see happening. If Biden wins, he doesn't make it 4 years. If Trump wins, we'll make it 4 years, but we'll be a completely different country. And
for better or worse.
That is to be found. But it is going to irrevocably change the trajectory of our country.
What's going to be really interesting
cycle, and it sucks that we're at that point, but either way we go, left or right, it is going to change the course of the country. And that's on a path that we can't change.
I think what then becomes super duper interesting And we don't have the VP pick yet. But then what becomes very interesting is the 2028 election. And do we have the blowback where they say, let's say the Republicans, if it goes good, the Republicans are going to go, this is the way to go. Let's keep going. Let's roll with it. And they'll win by a landslide. If it goes poorly, then you can have the GOP say, hey, at the time we thought that was the best way to go. We are going to hit the reset button. And the Democrats, and at that point, I think the 28 election is going to be the real question of what way this country goes.
Nope.
Because
I'll tell you why I disagree. By 28, it'll already be decided, right? The foundation was set in 2020 with the first Trump term. He'll finish. Trump is not wasting no time. You give that guy a Senate who's behind him, and you get a House that's narrowly divided. It is going to be hell. It's going to be a hellacious 4 years of policy pushing and agenda setting.
So that's a good question.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good thought. So here's my question to that, though. How much down ballot gravity does Trump have? Like, if Trump wins, does he have enough gravity to give him the Senate and give him the House? Or are you going to see what happened in, wasn't it 2016, where he didn't have that poll, and so the Senate stayed with Democrat? It was still a split between the House and the Senate.
The Senate's not changing many seats. There's not going to be enough seats to change the influence of the Republicans in the Senate. The only way that happens is if McConnell and his crew either dies out or just decides to retire.
Is McConnell going to run again? I thought he was done.
No, I think this is the last one.
Oh,
this is his last one.
We'll see.
Where it's going, the House is where you're going to see, you potentially could see the most turnover. But you set an agenda with you got POTUS Trump for 4 years, right? You give him a Senate and you give him a slight either minority or majority in Congress. I mean, in the House, he's going to replace the 3 aging guys on the SCOTUS seats, right? So you're going to pull those 80, 85, and 90-year-old guys off the SCOTUS seat. I'm going to replace them with 40-year-old justices, conservative justices.
Clarence Thomas is the oldest, right?
He's 87, I think he is.
Isn't Sotomayor the second oldest?
Yeah, but she's not going to resign. I'm talking about the 3 oldest Republicans.
Oh no, okay, but my question there though is, could you see a situation? Yes, I agree with you. Replace if they'll step down, I could see that for sure. But do you also go even from 6'3" to 7'2"? 4 more years, Sotomayor?
Could possibly.
She's going back in her cloakroom and crying about certain decisions.
Possibly, yeah. Yeah, and then
if she.
So you're looking at, that's what I'm saying. Like it's the way the country was able to shift in Trump's first term, which is why Hillary was not the candidate to run at that time. She was not the candidate. It was too much at stake and she had too much baggage, but that's a moot point at this cost. But these next 4 years, you got 3, maybe 4 SCOTUS seats up for grabs. The 3 youngest SCOTUSes are in their early 50s, late 40s, right? So they reasonably can run at least another 25 years. On average.
Roberts isn't that old either, though. I think the most,
like 60.
The most is it 4 at most?
3 or 4. 3 or 4 seats.
But even that circumstances come into play. Now, look, I'll tell you this. The reason I did not vote for Trump in 2016. I voted third party. I voted for Trump in 2020 because I thought he was 3 for 3 on SCOTUS appointments. Okay. I'm a conservative. I like those guys. 100% fine with it. I think SCOTUS is a lot less divided than people would like to believe. When you see the majority of decisions that have come out in the last couple of years have been 7-2, 8-1, or 9-0. The vast majority of them. I think it's something like 80% have been almost, that 7, that higher. So yeah, it's going to be really interesting. I think the Senate, I still, with all the retirements, I think that's going to throw a bit of chaos.
Yep.
I think that when you look at I think what's really scary to me is when you look at the 74 million people voted for Trump, 81 million voted for Biden in 2020. And that's one of those things that people go, and I think it's a kind of a fair argument, like 81 million people voted for Joe Biden? Like, really?
You know what's going to be fun? The deciding metric of this election is going to come down to the hands of white women. No. Not
no, it's not. It's going to be you.
Well, black men are already gone. That 4% is going to sway. We're going to talk. Listen, what's going to happen? We're going to talk a lot of shit, right? This is what we do. We talk a lot of trash. Oh, Democrat, this, that, and the other. Democrat, this, and the other. Will come November 4th, you're going to get 2%, 2 to 3% vote for Republican, and you're going to get 96, 97% vote. Well, it's trust me, it's what it is. But where you gonna get it at? That white suburban mom, right? And those abortion issues. I'm telling you, it's going to matter. Depending on how
I agree.
Depending on how they feel about it, because we know where white guys are gonna vote. We got a pretty good solid base on white conservative men. We got a pretty good solid base on black women, right? We know where those two solid blocks are, right? The Latinos are kind of split in the middle with the whole thing. They're kind of half and half, right? And they're marginal. And then we kind of get into the marginalities after that. But white women and black men are what's going to sway this election. That's going to be it.
I think that yes, but let me give you the yes, but the excitement. I think you're going to have so many people that are just going to go, I'm not voting for Biden. Well, I can't vote for Trump, but I'm not voting for, I'm just not going to vote. I think that's where the difference is, because you look at that excitement of Trump, and I think you have those people the people that believe the election was stolen. Now, I've said many times, I believe it was manipulated, not stolen.
Yep.
But I think you have enough people that are going to go, I'm not going to allow Wisconsin to go to Biden over 20,000 votes. Everybody, if you are a Trump, if you support Trump, if you're just against what Biden has done in this by going after Trump, you need to go out and get that. I think that's where Trump wins. I think Trump actually has, this might sound crazy. I think Trump has a legitimate, like a 50-50 chance of winning the popular vote.
I think it's more than that. So I'm with you.
If he wins the popular vote, he wins 360 electoral votes.
Easily.
Landslide.
It's going to be an interesting summer. I'm telling you, this debate is going to be critical, because you got to hit the streets after that, man. And right now, the campaign is not doing it. They're not doing it. Either way, we can go ahead and wrap this up, my brother. Until next time, guys. We'll cut.
I don't know. But we only talked about one thing the whole night. But what a one thing.
Next week, I won't be here. If you want to run the show, you can. One man show next week. I got to go to Cali.
Hey! What is the name of this cast?
It is 2 POGs. So yeah.
I don't see a one up there.
Standing POG. I'll find a standing POG to fill in.
When do you leave?
Huh? I am leaving. I'm leaving Sunday. I'll actually be flying. So that's
next Sunday.
I'll be flying Sunday afternoon.
You want to do a special short Friday night version?
Hell yeah, we can do that.
Let's do that.
Friday it is, folks. Until next time, we out of here.